Hello, TheoTraders. This is your evening report for Tuesday, April 5th. What I'm showing here is a heat map of the S&P 500. So I got to this through going to Market Watch and then going down to the indices. We can see that kind of regardless of what index that we look at today, it was pretty much an equal opportunity thrashing out there. Okay, only Pfizer seemed to do well with the Dow. So sticking with the S&P 500, a lot of red here, not much green. So let's do this. Let's start with the S&P 500 and let's go to the other three additional index futures charts. We'll go and look at the Russell, we'll look at the NQ as well as the Dow, and we'll see what's going on here on the daily chart and what levels that we need to care about right now. So is today's move down, is this the start of a new huge move or what? Is it something that we just ignore and discount, and should the dip be bought? Well, let's get into the levels that we need to watch. So if we look over here on the right hand side, let's kind of zoom in on this. Okay, so you can clearly see this big uptrend that's come off of the bottom here in mid-February. Okay, with associated higher highs and higher lows. Nice uptrend. What would have to happen for this uptrend to start becoming violated? Well, what I want to focus on is this low right here, which is just about 2012. And what I want to do is set a price level there. Okay, so there's that price level. And what would have to happen is the price would have to come down here, break through there. Break through that level, and that's where things will get interesting, right? So until the price gets down through this level, and obviously that's going to, right now the price closed about 2039, so we've got a ways to go before that's going to get down there and make things interesting. If it does break down through there, then what it does is that increases the odds that any rebound from here will only create a lower high and then roll over again. And that's going to be more interesting. Now, if that does occur, then let's go up to the weekly chart and kind of give you a sense of what that's going to mean. So if we just look at the weekly chart here, let's kind of do the same thing here. We'll zoom in on that. All right, maybe that's a little bit too much zooming, okay? So let's try that. All right, so what that's going to do is, if we start to see a lower high and lower low on the daily chart, then what this will do is that just will pull down and start to swing down on the weekly chart. Again, no big deal. No big deal, because more than likely that's going to create a higher low. What happens after that is going to be the important thing. I don't want to get in front of myself here because we're probably a few weeks away from that. But that's going to be a very important inflection point as to whether or not this just becomes a higher low, higher high, and then we start to move into, thin air up here, or whether this is going to roll over and create a lower high, lower low like this and start to sell down. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go back over to the daily chart and look at some of the other charts. Okay, here's the Russell chart. Now the Russell has been the weakest of the major indices that we follow, and is already sold off. I think it's somewhere close to 30% from the last year's highs. So this thing is just getting drubbed. Okay, strong rally though off of the bottom. What would have to happen here is it looks like we'd probably have to break somewhere around the 1060 level on the TF. So the TF is the Russell futures. It's going to be slightly different on the RUT cash index for that level. So again, what we'd have to see is the price coming down before we'd have to get more concerned about the trend of the Russell. The price would have to break down through this level. Otherwise, any pullback here more than likely is going to create some type of either range bound or maybe even drive into new highs from here. So pullbacks along the way are very normal, as we've seen along the way here. So there's nothing to be concerned about. But if we do break down through this level, like I said with the other indices that we're talking about here, that would likely create the probability of a lower high setting up here and a lower low. Okay, so trouble on the Russell, on the TF, if it breaks down through 1060. Okay, same drill. Here's the NQ. Let's see what's going on with the NQ. The NQ would have to break down through about 43.65. Let's see what the actual low on this is. The actual low is 43.65. So if the NQ breaks down through 43.65, then we have increased the odds that we're going to set up a lower high here, and we're going to have a more interesting spring. We'll put it that way. Okay, and we'll finish up by looking at the Dow, the mini Dow, the YM. This one's actually been pretty strong here. So where do we have to look out for? About the 17,300 level. 17,300 level. If the price breaks down through there, again, we have increased the odds that we're starting to see a little bit of a change in polarity. We're starting to see distribution at the top. Maybe this is a normal thing because we have earnings coming up and people are taking profits before the risk of earnings. We also have a little bit of Fed speak later on this week, so anything can happen with that. So that's it for tonight's report. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.